Hello, Andri. Thanks for joining me today. At Net Zero Compare, our audience includes sustainability leaders, policy professionals, consultants, and technical teams who work every day on decarbonization, digital transformation, and regulatory compliance. You're a digital sustainability lead at Cambridge University Process Assessment. Your work sits at the intersection of publishing, education, and digital sustainability. This is a sector often overlooked in climate discussions, even though its global footprint is large and growing. I'm looking forward to understanding how you see the digital sustainability agenda evolving, what you have learned inside a complex organization like Cambridge University Press and Assessment, and what practical insights others can apply in their own work.
Carol, thank you so much for inviting me. Really great to be here.
Thank you. Let's get started. So, if you could tell us about your path into digital sustainability, if you could walk us through your career path and what led you to focus specifically on digital sustainability within the publishing and education sector.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting one because I did not come from a traditional technology background. I studied publishing, it's all about books. But I very soon in my studies realized that I really enjoyed the digital side of publishing. So I did my master's in digital publishing and start working on the digital side at the like high point of ebooks, basically. So I did ebook development and that kind of thing, and eventually I kind of found my way into product management in digital publishing. So I've always been on the digital side of publishing. But I also had a real passion and have a real passion for sustainability. And a couple of years ago, when my husband and I moved over to the UK, I felt quite overwhelmed by the amount of waste and trash that I saw in London. And I started my own little blog around sustainability and started educating myself about how to live more sustainably. And I got more involved in sustainability efforts across the business. And about 5 years ago, I was leading a talk that we were hosting internally for a conference around sustainability in publishing. And one of the speakers mentioned a tool called Dimpact. And this tool was meant to help companies calculate the carbon emissions of their websites. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. This sounds like it's right up my kind of road. And I started reading up about it for what was our innovations fund to test out this tool for a year. And this was during COVID. So it was my little COVID side project at work, and started doing carbon emissions calculations on some of our platforms. Now, I'm not a data analyst. I was lucky enough to get some data apprentices to help me do this, but I was just really passionate about learning how to do it. And during this time, I did all kinds of courses around sustainability leadership and sustainability in business, and just kind of educated myself because there's no traditional learning path into digital sustainability. And then about 3 years ago, the business decided they wanted a dedicated role around digital sustainability. And I was very lucky enough to be able to get the role because of the education that I'd done for myself to learn about digital sustainability in the industry. Yeah, now I get to focus on this specifically, which is great. I still get to work in publishing, which is great as well.
That's actually very interesting. And it always starts as a side project. It's also very helpful to hear how those experiences shaped your view of where digital operations create actually real sustainability gaps and opportunities.
Yeah.
So now, if you could let us understand the footprint of digital publishing, because digital products are often assumed to be low impact, but the data shows otherwise. So, from your work, what parts of digital publishing lifecycle tends to carry the largest environmental footprint?
Yeah. So um, as a rule, we know from the work that we've done, and other publishers will agree and know this as well. The majority of the publishing carbon footprint sits in the physical supply chain, so the paper and the freight and the warehousing and those things. The digital emissions are lower. Depending on what you include in those emissions, it can be anywhere from 50% lower to about 80% lower. And that's because there's no consensus in the industry around what we should and shouldn't be reporting on. So to understand where digital emissions come from, we collect three sets of data. We look at the data from hosting of our content online, so the hosting of any website online. Talk, about data centers, so basically the emissions from a data center, which is huge because we tend to, in the digital space, just chuck everything into the cloud, and we never really take it out. And the whole um, well, the advantage of digital is that it lasts forever, but that's also the disadvantage from the sustainability side. So we look at that. We also look at the internet usage, the energy usage from internet that customers use, and then the emissions from customers actually accessing our digital products, so websites or ebooks or anything like that. And that's where the majority of the emissions are, because people will access content from all around the world, but different places all around the world have different energy grids, different devices have different energy uses. And we have no control over how people use our content, how long they spend on it, where they're accessing from. Um, and that's where the tricky part comes in, because according to Greenhouse Gas Protocol reporting, that is under category, I think it's 13, which is optional, use of sold products. So it's optional to report on it, and most technology companies don't report on the emissions from sold products. Um, we do have to report on emissions from cloud hosting, from our hosting services, because that's a paid for service. So we report on that part. And that is where, if you're looking at it from a paid perspective or from a reporting perspective, currently where the majority of the emissions are. But if we look at a digital product holistically, majority of emissions come from people actually using our products. Um, but there is the ongoing debate on who is responsible for those emissions. I believe it is the technology company creating the technology, and it's our responsibility to make our content as low energy, as efficient as possible. But as I say, it's an ongoing debate.
Oh, yes, that breakdown is actually very useful. A lot of companies and people, myself included, underestimate backend infrastructure and long tail data storage. So, thank you very much for this perspective. It should help clarify the real drivers.
Yeah.
Now, let's switch to data quality and measurement challenges. So,
Yeah.
measuring the emissions of digital systems is still messy, unfortunately. So, what practical approaches have you worked for when it comes to data gathering, estimation, and filling methodological gaps?
Yeah, it's been a real kind of journey for us. I'm very glad that we started our journey off with Dimpact. So a little bit background on the tool. The tool was developed by the University of Bristol here in the UK, along with a consultancy company, sustainability consultancy company called SLR, and it was originally developed for the BBC because I wanted to understand what was the difference between the carbon emissions of moving from their print news to digital. And what was really nice about starting our journey with them was that they made it really easy to understand where the emissions are for digital products. They map kind of the tool to your value chain, and that really helped us to start understanding where we need to go to collect data. Um, And what was also really nice is that Dimpact isn't just a tool, it's a community of companies who come together and we work together to kind of find out, to improve how we're doing things, how we're collecting data. We all had the same questions. One of the biggest challenges that we found with data collection is around your cloud hosting. Because the cloud hosting companies, the big three, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they're not transparent in terms of their emissions. They also have completely different methodologies. And only really very recently have they started becoming more open and publishing their methodologies. When I started out doing this work 5 years ago, there was no AWS cloud emissions methodology. We didn't know what locations, like everything was market based. All of the emissions that they were giving us was market based, and it was 3 months outdated in their dashboards. So we had to make assumptions based on location. So we would go into our billing information and we would say, okay, we know where all of our locations are and apply a country grid emission to every single location. Um, it didn't really matter whether AWS said it was green or not. We couldn't use that for our reporting because we had no official way of knowing it. So that has been a really big challenge. Since then, we've been able to, at first, we refined our own methodologies and we were able to get the data to be able to say, yes, we're making these assumptions, but they're based on X, Y, and Z. Since then, we've partnered with another company called Green Pixie, who they built on the original, I call it the original methodology for cloud emissions calculations from Cloud Carbon Footprint. And they've taken that methodology and expanded it. And their methodology is ISO certified, so we can use that for reporting. And they're basically now doing the hard grafting work of going to look at the locations and water usage and all of those kind of things. So we went from kind of making a lot of assumptions around what the emissions are per location to now partnering with companies who are working to create a bit more of a standard around emissions calculations for the cloud. And I think that's a really good thing because if we each go away and make our own assumptions, especially around cloud emissions, that's when there's a lot of misinformation, incorrect reporting, that kind of thing. So that was really the place where we had the biggest challenge. And I think the other part where we're still using assumptions and proxy data is around network, the internet that our customers are using, because we don't know whether someone is accessing via a fixed line network or Wi-Fi or what they're doing. There is just no real data out there. There's no way of tracking that. So that's still an assumption that we're making. But we do know that internet traffic and energy usage is pretty stable. I am on the argument side that yes, it's stable in certain regions, but not necessarily in others, especially areas that are data poor. We're thinking sub-Saharan Africa. We have a lot of customers in the global south. For those places, or internet energy usage is potentially much higher, just because of the way that they're accessing, but it's not necessarily as stable. But there's just not really a lot of data available on that. So we do still use like general global averages for that. But I'd love to see more research on that side. So yeah.
Plus, I think it's important to stress out that making assumptions actually is pretty vital at this point because from our observations, we've noticed that many organizations tend to wait for perfect data and end up doing nothing. So hearing from you what is good enough to start is very valuable.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And I personally think not everyone will agree with me, but in my experience, I found that if you have numbers to start with to go to your senior executives in companies, then they start listening, even if they're not 100% correct. If you're open and honest about your assumptions, then they start listening and you start getting that like investment and resource to start improving your data reporting. So I think you have to start somewhere. It's just about being very honest about what the assumptions you're making.
I totally agree. Now, reducing emissions should come without disrupting learning quality, of course. So, how do you balance sustainability goals with the need to maintain or improve user experience for learners, educators, and researchers?
Yeah, so I always say it's not about stopping, it's about doing it better. Um, Especially on the research and education side, you know, you we have this amazing, like these amazing digital tools where we can showcase research experiments, or we can help with learning through video content or audio content or things like that. And that's really important because that's what the market wants. But we've discovered small things like just having a better standard around how you include media in your products can make a huge difference. The sizes of your files that you're including, for example, um, or thinking about, do I need high resolution? A lot of this comes into design and sustainable web design. Thinking about colors that you're using, thinking about the type of image that you're using. We've recently been advising a lot of our design colleagues around switching from especially like PNG to a WebP format for images, which a couple of years ago would have been like a big no-no, but the technology's developed so much that it's highly compressed image, but it's a really good quality. So, we have to keep on looking at how's the technology advancing and get better standards. So that is where we go towards. Not about stopping, but thinking about what you're putting in the product and doing it in a efficient way. We have advised sometimes saying, do you do you really need that? Not you don't always need all of those things in the product as well. And then also just thinking about the customer, because my argument to our product teams a lot of the times is, what is the main goal of what we're creating? And they'll say, well, our content. I'll be like, okay, so our content is, in the written form or maybe some visuals on. But if you're putting files onto our products that are so big that our customers can't even open it, especially in a lot of the countries that are data poor, those are big customers for us. That our whole goal is around education, um, then we're not achieving our goal. And starting to think with that mindset, not creating for just a European market, but starting to create for a global market has kind of switched up quite a bit of thinking for some of our product teams as well. So yeah, it's just about thinking about it a little bit differently.
That's perfect. And I think the end game at the end of the day is how to how sustainability can be integrated without compromising core outcomes. So
Amazing.
everyone's happy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So now let's switch to procurement and supplier engagement because large educational organizations like Cambridge University rely heavily on suppliers and tech vendors. So, what has helped you engage suppliers and push for more transparent, low impact digital services?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one because the tech industry is not very transparent. And also there tends to be, whenever we have discussions with tech suppliers, whether it's software suppliers or in the cloud or even hardware suppliers are slightly better, but especially software suppliers, they'll say, oh, but the service is digital, we have no footprint. Very few software suppliers are measuring their carbon footprint. They'll measure their scope 1 and 2 footprint, but not necessarily the footprint of us using their service. So our percentage of their scope 3, which is really what we want. We don't want the emissions of, you know, their buildings or that kind of thing. That's not ours to think about. Um, but so it's been a challenge. Some stuff that has helped is being part of organizations like Impact, where we've been working with them and they have been able to put together working groups to lobby certain of the big tech players or uh, documentation that we can all share and test with our suppliers. So again, it's that community that you're creating. And I think that's been helpful to a degree. It's very much a journey. Um, we've because we are in a place where we've done quite a lot of the emissions calculations already. We understand a lot of it comes from us needing to have the conversations with the suppliers and then kind of taking them on a journey. Um, but some suppliers have been great. You get suppliers like Salesforce who've done amazing work and they're very happy to share. And usually, when you talk to those teams, they're like so glad somebody asked them about what the carbon emissions are and how you got to the calculations. Um, so it's very much a mixed bag of what you get. I do think that um, more we need to, as a technology industry, become stricter on what we ask for. But a lot of that is also due to the lack of guidance in like official greenhouse gas protocol reporting, science-based targets around technology carbon reporting. So I think that's a big challenge. Yeah, so I think that's been one of the main things.
So as always, both sides need to cooperate. There must
Yeah,
be a will.
exactly. Yeah.
So, Cambridge University Press and Assessment is a global institution with many moving parts. So, what governance structures or processes have helped make digital sustainability progress possible?
So, I mean, it's interesting thing. We have a very big focus on sustainability. Um, we recently launched our first responsibility report, where anyone can go have a look at that. And we are signed up to the UN Global Compact. We have set scope 1 and 2 science-based targets aligned with the University of Cambridge itself. We are a department of the university, so we do align with them, but we've also got our own target as well for scope 1 and 2. So I think firstly, having the commitment from the university um, made it easier for us to commit. But also, we have a lot of grassroots kind of work. It's a very interesting place to work, and I feel very proud to work here because um, our colleagues keep our executives accountable. Um, People have a lot of ethical, moral fiber in this business because we do this because we're passionate about, people and education and the planet. Um, and that is why we have a board member who is specific who looks after sustainability. So we have those structures in place, and having that means that it's always on the agenda. It's not perfect. We're still trying to get it into things like KPIs for all of our products, and it's we are a huge company, a global company, like you said. Um, but we do have a commitment, and that's something that has helped kind of formalize some roles like mine, and also helps us to stay on track because it's not only about the kind of the money you make. guess it also helps that we're a not-for-profit company, so that helps a little bit as well. That it's part of what we do. Uh, and it's really important to our customers as well. So I think it's not just governance, it's a bit of everything. I think it's our customers and our colleagues who have held the business to account so that we can have the governance to then um, get it on the agenda. But yeah, we still have a long way to go, but I think yeah, we've definitely got good amount of support for the work we're doing.
And I can believe that that level of coordination is not that easy, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
Was
mean the amount of amount of offices we have, the amount of products we have is quite daunting sometimes.
I can picture that. And so what is important, I think that especially bigger organizations that they should always start building internally so that they can make meaningful changes outside the organizations.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And now let's talk about devices and hardware. So hardware use is still one of the biggest blind spots. How do you approach questions around lifespan extension, circularity, and procurement for IT equipment?
Oh, it's such a good question because we have a project that we're working on around our emissions from our hardware at the moment. And it's a really tricky one because in the past, there's been this idea, and I think it's very much come from people working in the business as well. Everyone wanted the newest laptop. You want a quick laptop. You want to be able. And I think I think some of that is shifting. People are starting to understand that devices have carbon footprints, and at least for us, as I mentioned, a lot of people have that kind of ethical mindset. People are happy with the fact that you don't get a new device if your old device breaks. You might get a refurbished one, kind of a thing. Doing things like refurbishing devices and extending the lifetime is, I think, a key thing for any company. Just because something might not work right now, someone needs a new laptop right now, but it can be fixed. So being able to do that, I think, is really important, and having a policy to be able to do that and refurbish them and give them back to other colleagues. Um, and I think, I mean, the general kind of lifetime usage that you get advised from Dell, I think, is 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And really, you can extend the device to quite a bit after that. I think the frustrating thing is when new software comes out, like Windows 11 just came out, and we know that support for Windows 10 is going to start dropping. But a lot of the older devices can't necessarily run Windows 11, especially because Windows 11 has like a lot of AI built into it. So that is the frustrating part. And it's that where companies can set policies in place around extending the lifetime and that kind of thing. But if the hardware suppliers keep on bringing out new software to make the hardware obsolete, that's a big problem. So again, there needs to be better regulation around that. I don't think companies who purchase hardware can do much about that. Hopefully, more legislation can come out around that kind of thing at some point, especially out of the EU. But I think what companies can also start doing is when you do when your device does get to its end, thinking about recycling and donating devices as well. So not just having them, because most companies have a contract with like removing the waste of any kind of hardware, and that's not just laptops. It's, let's say, you have servers or you have um, network devices, so it'll get removed. But then we usually stop thinking about it. And the important thing is that as a company, we still understand that that waste is actually still part of our carbon reporting, and it's still our carbon emissions. So, kind of finding a partner that will rather do recycling or donation of the devices is much better. It's better for our carbon reporting, but it's also better for the planet. But I think it's something that gets overlooked quite easily, because in the past, it's always been oh, we've handed it off and it's not our problem anymore. And I think that's where the sustainability teams talking with procurement teams and starting to highlight those kind of things becomes quite critical to do. So, yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. It's beneficial for the planet and also for us consumers. I
Yeah.
also think that extending device life is one of the fastest ways to cut emissions. But as you said, it's overlooked in strategy documents. And unfortunately, in the past years, we could see like fast fashion, built-in obsolescence. I won't even mention Apple products and their battery lifespans.
Exactly.
So
It's
it's
so
positive to see
frustrating.
the positive shift at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now let's talk about the cultural side of sustainability adoption. So from your experience, what helps teams across an organization adopt more sustainable digital habits, especially when they are not sustainability specialists?
It's a great question. And I think there's a big part around culture to play. A big part of my role and a lot of my colleagues who work in sustainability, we're about 6 people who work across sustainability. We're in the business in various areas. We're the only ones who really have sustainability in our titles, but a big part of our jobs, our roles are to educate, and to kind of educate and communicate what sustainability is, what are carbon emissions, how can we start to improve it. The first kind of 2 years of my role, most of what I did was talks. I went to teams and talk to them at their team meetings or at events and things, and I would just kind of explain what is digital sustainability. And you'll find one or two people who really pick it up and they become really passionate about it, and they become the drivers. What we're really keen on kind of doing at some point is that sustainability should become part of every role. And even if it's not part of your title, making it part of your objectives and your goals that you want to achieve in the year. So I think that is the way that we are moving, at least on our side. But you can only really do that when the company has made that commitment towards sustainability, and a more sustainable way of working. But I think the main thing is around education, training. We do an amazing course called Carbon Literacy, and we encourage colleagues to do that. And when they do that, they get a certificate, and it's both a course that's an introduction to kind of climate change and carbon emissions and how everything works and sustainability, but also you customize it with what we're doing in the company. It's an amazing company that then gives you the certification, and then colleagues make commitments and make pledges on things to do for the next year. And then usually it's connected to their jobs. So it's those kind of things where um, colleagues then start doing it. I've seen other colleagues who have taken an interest in something, and then they they do very much what I've done, where you start learning more and more and more, and you might become a specialist in that field and almost create a new role for yourself, or that kind of thing. So I think the way that we're working, the titles, all those things are changing. Um, but it all starts with a couple of people kind of like educating and evangelizing kind of sustainability. across the business. Yeah, a cultural thing. It's a very cultural thing.
That's a very fair point. Maybe it will sound cheesy, but I think culture and habits are more impactful than any single tool or policy. I always
Yeah,
give this example from my own personal life. Since I was a small kid, I was taught by my parents never to litter on streets. Even like a little piece of paper, I would always wait for hours, put it into my pocket, and then look for a garbage can.
100%.
Small things, but matter, and then
Yeah.
it builds up your integrity for bigger tasks.
Exactly, and a very good example that we lost or this year we actually ran a digital cleanathon across the business, and we thought it would be quite small, and we did like lots of little things, like supported colleagues on like how to clean up their email and their OneDrive and things like that, and it had a huge effect. Like such a like we never thought it would have such a big effect, and it's helped kind of shape some other policies that they're now bringing into the business around file storage and things like that. And that's the thing. It was just like a little habit that we tried to get people to get into. And it just made people realize that, your digital habits have an impact. Um, and it's the same thing. Like when you start learning that, then you'll never do that kind of bad thing again. You are like, I know, but I want to do better. And then it becomes just part of what you do. So yeah, I'm a big proponent for doing those small things and can have a huge kind of snowball effect with events and things like that. So yeah.
And were you being able to measure the impact of those changes that you've just mentioned? For example, the clearing of all the pen drives and excessive emails?
Yeah, we did. And we did a little, so we obviously use our methodology. So we always use for digital carbon accounting. And we made a little kind of Power BI dashboard and we were able to show the amount of like storage that we saved and then energy and so on. And I think what people found quite fascinating was actually looking at their own inboxes, for example, and seeing, oh, this is how big it is now. I've just deleted all of these things and like now it's so much smaller and it almost became a little competition where if you're like ooh well we did do a competition on top of that where we said like in your team see if you who can like bring it down the most, and that's the thing, like it's just yeah it creates that kind of habit and a little bit of competition and then yeah, so it was very cool.
And I'm also pretty sure that it increased your productivity across
Oh
the team.
yeah, definitely.
So your work also touches accessibility. Where do you see alignment between digital accessibility improvements and sustainability objectives?
So when a product is accessible, it is 99% also sustainable. And that's because building an accessible product is building a user journey that's really efficient. Um, there are arguments that with the new EU Accessibility Act, there are a lot of extra requirements that need to be added to products like extra alt text and things like that. But in general, we know that an accessible product is sustainable. We have the WCAG accessibility guidelines. We also have a digital sustainability or a web sustainability version called the STAR guidelines. And it's in the final processes of being published. And I actually went and did a little search in there once to see how many times the word accessibility comes up in the web sustainability guide. And it came up something like 47 times. So just shows that there is a direct link between the two. Um, so yeah, usually what I say if there's a team saying we have accessibility project, we just say, well, you do your project, we'll do like an assessment before and after, and we've almost always seen a drop in emissions come as well. So yeah, in general, accessible product is a more sustainable, more efficient product as well.
That's a great insight because these two fields are often treated separately, even though the solutions overlap far more than people expect, as you've just
Yeah,
mentioned.
100%. Yeah.
Now let's switch to practical guidance for other organizations, maybe also smaller ones, not only super big like Cambridge University. So for companies starting their digital sustainability journey, what are the first 2 or 3 actions you believe make the most immediate and measurable difference?
So I always say, well, we have 3 steps that you want to go through. It's measure, set targets, and improve. But you can't always go in that kind of direction. You might not have the ability to measure. And if you can't measure, you can't set targets, but you might be able to improve. So, my first set of advice is to go away and look at what are the things you can improve. So, there are organizations like Whole Grain Digital, things like that, where you can find guidance on how to be more sustainable in the web. So, taking those practices, we will be publishing um, from our own learnings, condensed kind of guide on like digital sustainability in March next year. So people can look out for that, and they'll be available. Um, because that is the place that product teams can start thinking about how you're building your product, thinking about the like incorporating the planet almost into your product thinking. The second part is I do believe very much that measuring is really important, even though, as we said before, it's not 100% accurate from the start. So there are tools like Website Carbon, which is a tool that you can put the URL in of your website and it can track well, it calculates the carbon emissions. Now, again, it doesn't calculate all of the usage, and it's not 100% accurate, but it gives you a idea of what the emissions are of your site, and then you can start from there. They actually then have links to sort resources to go and look at how you can start improving your designs, etc., for your website. Looking at page weights is really really one of those things. So I think you kind of look at that wheel and you choose where can you put your resources. Is it in measuring, and can we can we bring in a tool like Dimpact, or do we not have the means to do that? Can we only use a free tool, or is it we rather want to start educating our teams on how to build better products, and then you look at that side. That's where we started, and that's what I would always recommend because it can become very technical and very kind of nitty gritty when you start looking at, oh, I need to improve my cloud hosting and that kind of thing. It gets complicated, and I would never advise anyone to start there, even though that might be where a lot of your emissions are. It's not necessary. If you do want to look at cloud emissions, then you can talk to your cloud provider, or you can use the Green Web Foundation. They are a great company where they provide information about how green certain sites are and the hosting specifically. So that is another tool that you can use that's free. And they have a lot of resources as well. But again, it is a much more technical side, and I wouldn't recommend making that a focus from the start. Yeah.
Thanks very much. That's clear and actionable. So let's hope that our audience will be able to use those starting points right away. And is there anything important we haven't touched on? Perhaps something you wish more organizations understood about digital sustainability?
I mean, I think we can't end this conversation without just touching on AI as well, because it's something that obviously over the last year has taken up a lot of my time, and I think it's really important that in in the digital side, in the technology side, and technology businesses, that we understand the difference between AI for sustainability and sustainable AI. Well, no, sorry. AI for sustainability and sustainability of AI. Sustainable AI doesn't exist. There is not a thing like sustainable AI. But sometimes we can use AI for sustainability reasons, like, for example, to uh, get more accurate energy measurements, that kind of thing. But building AI needs to move to a place where we are building it more sustainably as well. Again, AI is not going to go away. Again, I'd never say stop doing it, but with the same principle of being more efficient is something that we have to start applying to AI as well. So that, I think that's really, really important. It's not any different. We don't have to treat it any differently from digital sustainability in general. Um, but we do need to start being aware that when we use AI, when we build AI products, there is an impact, and we need to do it as efficiently as possible, whether that's through the models that we use, whether that's through the companies we partner with, thinking about the wider sustainability impact. So I think that's the like one of the key things that over the next year or two will be very interesting to watch, and see what comes out around emissions of AI, but also how we can start being more efficient around it. So I'm quite interested in seeing how that'll go over the next year or two.
Thank you very much for adding that because it gives a more complete picture of the challenges and opportunities ahead. And I will just add that even small things from our side, like thinking about the prompt, not adding too much words, then it uses less tokens. And of course, it translates into the reduction of energy needed for AI to process our prompt is very important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Prompt effectively. That's what we always say.
Exactly. Andri, thank you very much for sharing your insights. Digital sustainability is becoming a core part of how organizations operate, and your experience in the global education environment offers a lot for others to learn from. We'll publish a summary of this conversation on Net Zero Compare and share the recording on YouTube and our podcast channels. It has been great speaking with you today.
Thank you so much, Carol, for inviting me, and yeah, for sharing this with your audience. It's great. Thank you.